Welcome to episode 119 of the Valley Sports Talk podcast. You guys might be aware that I said 117 in the last episode, and I was in fact incorrect because I accidentally named the last two episodes before that the same number, so I got confused. This is 119. We're back. Brian has a camera for once. Um,
Huge.
yeah, we're back within the same week, which is very shocking for us. I don't know what the heck is going on, but we decided
The
that
research.
since the Stanley Cup was presented 2 nights ago, we should not record it next week and keep up on things. But yeah, the Florida Panthers are your 2025 Stanley Cup champions. They go back to back for the first time since Pittsburgh and like the third time in the last 20 years or something like that. It was a pretty convincing win. Thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it just to me it kind of looked like Edmonton had nothing left. You watch that game and they just again they couldn't stop Florida in the first period. It's a quick goal by Florida, which should pretty much I don't know if you heard that, but it just screamed in my computer. This video is being recorded. Anyways, so yeah, I think just Florida coming out in the first period again, scoring a quick goal, really demoralized the Oilers, or at least it looked like it did. They never really had a pushback or some sort of intense like 5-10 minute half a period pressure where Edmonton looked like they could somewhat battle back. Obviously, they had some chances, and Bobrovsky played really well, but they never really had that sustained pressure to come back against Florida's hot start, which was basically the moral of the series was Florida started off hot and Edmonton couldn't keep up.
Yeah, it was very quick start, obviously. Couple rough games, especially for Ekholm, who's been, one of their best defensemen since he's been traded there. But he on that Reinhardt goal, he kind of got caught going the wrong way. Reinhardt was able to get in, and yeah, the Florida Panthers scored that one goal and never looked back. I know a lot of people. This is kind of getting slightly off topic, but still kind of on topic. When the top six for the Olympics came out, a lot of people were questioning Reinhardt being on there. And it was kind of funny the fact that he went and scored 4 goals in this game to sort of silence them. I don't know. I guess we can quickly talk about that. Did you have any issues with Reinhardt being named one of the top six?
No, like he had a slow to his standards Stanley Cup Finals, obviously, but I mean, we saw what type of player he has been in the past. We saw what type of player, especially like last year in the playoffs, he was dominant. And this year he was pretty good too. It just wasn't the Stanley Cup Finals he was hoping for, obviously, until the 4 goal final game where he showed he does deserve to be one of the top Canadian people named to this nation's Olympic team. As I mean, he kind of carried the team on his back last night at the beginning of the game, and that first goal was nasty. It was like he dangled through Ekholm, their best defensive defenseman, and scored ball pretty much on his knees. But I'm not. I think he deserves to be one of Canada's top six, and he kind of showed it last night in the biggest moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I personally had no issues with being on there. He was a Selke finalist this year, and he's also a guy who scored 59 goals last year. So you put both those together, he's one of the best two-way players in the league. Um, Going off that, Sam Bennett named Conn Smythe. I know you're quite happy about that, based off a sports betting perspective, but not talking about the sports betting thoughts, opinions on Sam Bennett being named Conn Smythe.
I don't like Sam Bennett was obviously really good in the Cup Finals. I don't think he was particularly Florida's best player in the finals. He did still managed to put up quite a bit of points, but he took a lot of penalties. Sam Bennett did in the finals here, and like obviously he took the one tonight, but it was or in the game 6, but it was a 4-on-4, so it really doesn't matter. But he did take a couple penalties where he put his team shorthanded. Just luckily, Edmonton's power play really couldn't get it going, as Florida has a really good penalty kill. So I do think he deserved it overall. I think some people were kind of uh, disagreeing just because of kind of the way he played in the finals and how some other of his teammates looked in the finals. Like if you look at the voting, I think Marchand was only like 8 points back, which you get 5 for a first, 4 for a second, so on and so forth until top 5. But He was only 8 points back, Marchand, so it was really close. But overall, I do think Sam Bennett was the driver throughout the whole playoffs for Florida.
Yeah, and I also just want to, give a shout out to Bill Zito and how he sort of form this team. Getting a guy like Matthew Chuck, it sort of seemed like when they brought him over, it was sort of a culture change. Obviously, they had Barkov, getting Sam Reinhart for for Devin Levi in a first round pick, and then even this offseason, or this trade deadline, getting guys like Seth Jones and getting Brad Marchand, who's probably going to get paid. Really interesting if it's by Florida or not, but I think he'll probably look in the range of $8 million this offseason as a 37-year-old, which is pretty nuts. And the one I want to talk about the most is how they got a guy like Gustav Forsling on waivers a few years back. I don't know how a guy like this goes off waivers, on waivers and just explodes this much, but they have him at the next 7 years at $5.8 million, which I think you could argue is the best contract or most valuable contract in the league currently.
Yeah, it's funny because you look at a contract like that and you say how awesome it is, but the reason Florida has a good team is because they're built on contracts like this. I just have their sheet pulled up. Anton Lundell is making $5 million for the next 5 years, which also looks great. They're just built off these really good contracts, and I can't even remember what team put Forsling on waivers. I can't even remember,
Carolina.
but Carolina. Either way, I'm not like harping on Carolina because even before Florida got Forsling, they were a pretty good team, which means they're lower down in the waiver order. So a lot of teams had the chance to pick up Forsling and nobody did. So like he wasn't seen as this top defenseman, but obviously Florida saw something that most of the other teams in the league didn't see, and they get to reap the benefits having him at such a good contract for the next couple of years. So I mean, like you said, Bill Zito's done such a great job with this team, and a lot of the contracts are just set. They have contracts like their top four are Barkov at 10, Kachuk at 9.5, Reinhardt at 8.3, and Verhage at 7. And all those guys are locked up for the next 5 years at those numbers. So those contracts are only going to look better and better as time goes on. So this team's built not just for now, but for the future as well.
Yeah, and quickly before we maybe move on off this topic or off of Florida, did you happen to see how they went about dispersing the Stanley Cup the night of?
Yeah, I think they did a great job. Correct me if I'm wrong. They went to a lot of the players first off, like first year Florida Panthers, people that didn't win the cup last year. So you saw like Nate Schmidt was first, Seth Jones was second. But after that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they gave it to all the guys who didn't dress and play a lot of games. So like Balinskis was pretty close to the top. Samoskevich was close to one of the first people to touch it. Nico Sturm, Nosek, all those guys that didn't play a full playoff run with these guys, they let them touch it first, and I thought that was a good sign of respect, showing that even if you're not playing, you're a big part of the team, whether it's getting the guys ready in practice or being ready to step up when needed or whatever it is. So
Yeah, I guess it was cool to see. I personally I didn't stay up to watch that. I was just like the second that they sort of threw their gloves off and stuff, I just sort of was like, okay, that's enough for me. But looking back on it, yeah, it just shows sort of what type of leadership that they have there. And hats off to guys like Barkov and to Chuck and those guys who apparently they had came up with it before they won it, like they planned it before. So it just shows how confident they were also that they were gonna win it. And yeah, just a cool moment there. Let's jump to the other side of it. Let's talk about the Oilers' perspective. Obviously, 2 years in a row you lose to the same team. Last year in seven, this year in six. Um, I don't know if what series was closer. I'd like to say last year's, even though they went down 3-0, was a closer series than this year. It just seems like in all the games that they lost, they were like completely at a disadvantage or like completely were being manhandled by the Florida Panthers. What are your sort of quick thoughts on Edmonton's performance throughout these finals?
um, I don't know. we'll see. I personally think this year was closer. I know obviously last year went seven and this year only went six. And you do make a good point. Like two of Florida's wins were blowouts, but Florida had three blowouts last year. Games one, two, and three were all not close. I know one of the games was a one goal game, and I think last year Florida was up like 4-0, and then Edmonton made a little bit of a comeback in that game. But Florida won the first three games pretty convincingly last year, and Edmonton did win the next three, and then whatever game seven was close. But this year you had three overtimes. Like games five and six weren't really close. Edmonton or one of Florida's first two wins, I can't remember which one was semi close, and Edmonton didn't have Zach Hyman, who obviously isn't like a Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid, but he was leading the playoffs in hits. He's their forechecker. He's the guy who gets the puck for those guys to move around. He stands in front of the net so their goalie can't see. Zach Hyman does so much for this team, apart from like scoring goals and getting assists that when you lose that, it's hard to replace. And they did their best by trying to get Corey Perry to fill that role, which in my opinion, being 40, he did a great job at it. But you can't replace Zach Hyman. So I think even though it went down in six, I think Edmonton put up the best fight they could. But when you lose a guy like that, and I just don't think you can keep up because I think this Florida team is better than last year. And they did a good job to bring him to three overtimes and without a Zach Hyman or without I don't think Evander Kane's anywhere near healthy. So I do think they put up a pretty good fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really hard to replace a guy like Zach Hyman, especially if you're trying to do it with a 40-year-old. No offense to Corey Perry, but just at the age he's at right now, he's not the top line guy that he used to be, nor do I think he should be.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly getting into the goaltending situation. Obviously, Skinner wasn't the best in that game. Calvin Pickard, the game before, showed he wasn't that great. Where do you go from now for now with or from where do you go moving forward with this goalie situation in Edmonton?
I think it's really tough because which we can kind of go into next is Edmonton doesn't have a lot of cap space. They got 12 million bucks. They have to sign regardless of if they retire or not. They have to resign Corey Perry, Jeff Skinner, Connor Brown, Kasperi Kapanen, and of that $12 million in cap space they have to sign Trent Frederick. And I don't know if you saw the report, but it seems like they're trying to get Trent Frederick at like 4 mil.
I believe it's
So
I believe it's finalized. I don't know how much it's anywhere between 3.5 to 4, but it is going to be an eight
so
year.
that puts you down to eight instantly with Kapanen, Connor Brown, Jeff Skinner, Corey Perry, and you have an RFA and Evan Bouchard. So they don't really have cap space to play around with, and you have Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard signed to next year, so I think you got to roll with it again. Do I think that's probably what they want to be doing? No, but in saying that, Stuart Skinner is such a weird goalie. Like his save percentage and his goals against average are just terrible. But he tied the playoffs in shutouts with Bobrovsky. Like he had three shutouts. When he plays well, Stuart Skinner is very hard to beat. The only problem is when he's not playing like that, he lets in a lot of goals. Where if Bobrovsky's not at his best, he can still get through a game with letting in three. Where if like Stuart Skinner's not playing at his best, anything could go in, right? So I don't know. I think it's really tough. But if you're Edmonton, and I know you and I have been saying this since we basically started this podcast, which is crazy, is that Edmonton just needs a goalie and they'd be really good. And they still haven't done it. And I don't see how they, with the cap space they have, they get one next year.
Yeah, I was like the second they came out, I'm like, okay, who do they go after? I was thinking of goalies that might be available. There's not many, if any. There's not any good ones on the free agency market this year. They're just all locked up. The one guy that did come to mind was John Gibson. I know he's not. I would say I would say he's slightly better than Stuart Skinner. I don't think he's a number one anymore. But the Ducks have Dostal. I could see them maybe trying to swap a Pickard for Gibson and obviously trying to make the money work. I think Gibson obviously makes a bit more than Pickard. But that was the only guy that came to my mind. I know John Gibson has been on the trade block for a couple years now. and they just haven't been able to find a suitor for him. I think if you're Edmonton, you might as well give it a shot. It can't get any worse than what it was, and even if you don't, you have a sort of 1A, 1B guy in those two. But I don't know if they will be able to make the money work on that. And then getting to their free agency, I think Corey Perry will come back. I think he's already sort of said he wants to play another year. Um, Obviously, you're gonna have Hyman back next year, so Corey Perry hopefully won't be needed on that top line. I think he's fine if you have him on like the second power play unit to play net front, or just a fourth line guy in general. Kapanen looked good. Getting him on waivers is kind of good, but I think you're only gonna get so much about Kapanen. I know me and you know quite a bit about Kapanen and how he sort of starts off hot on a new team and then sort of cools down once he gets comfortable, which is
Yeah,
kind of weird to say,
yeah.
but. Other than that, the only one I mentioned is Bouchard. I think he could be in line for a massive deal. And he's also a sneaky, I think he could be a sneaky candidate for an offer sheet, where the Oilers might have to try to move off some cap if a team gives him maybe 10, close to 10 mil. I don't think he's going to get that, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team comes in offer sheets and like a 4-year deal, 4-year deal at 10 mil, and the Oilers have to decide if they're going to offer sheet or, um, even move on from him. I don't think they will, but like there, if a team does offer sheet him, there will be some tough decisions to be made in oil country.
Well, like just looking at it right now, like I said, they have once they sign Trent Frederick, they're going to have about 8 mil left. You assume Corey Perry is going to sign for like league men, so that's like 7 mil. They don't have the money for Bouchard currently, and
He already
even
took a
if
Braves
they
deal. I don't think he's not looking to take another one.
and even if they use all that remaining cap space to sign Bouchard, you only have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, like 10 forwards signed. So they're gonna have to make a move to clear up some cap space somewhere. I don't know where that
And
is.
that's
Whether
not
that's
even,
an Adam Henrique making 3 mil at 35, Victor Arvidsson making 4 at 32.
and he was in
They're
there the
gonna have to
lineup.
figure it out. Yeah, they're gonna have to
It's
figure it out
also going to
somehow.
be just very interesting because McDavid has 1 year left, and I know obviously people are going to talk about him leaving, yada yada yada. I don't think he's going to leave personally. As much as I would love to see it and see the Oilers sort of or Oilers fans in shambles, I think he's going to get upwards of $18 million, especially with the cap going up. So you have to obviously um, think about that because they're going to be talking about that extension this offseason because he is eligible to sign an extension this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, the Edmonton Oilers are in a bit, I don't want to say a tough spot considering they have bless you, two of the best, bless you again,
Thank you.
two of the top three players in the league, in my opinion. It's kind of hard to be in a bad situation when do have that caliber on your roster, but they have some tough decisions this offseason based off depth, defenseman, and goaltending. So it should be very interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you about that because I do have their cap space page open right now, and next year, like their UFAs include like on D, Ekholm, Wallman, and Kulak, and on forward, they'll have Paul Kozin, uh, Henrique and Arvidsson, who one will probably not be here, maybe both. Evander Kane and McDavid will all be UFAs next year. So, like, I don't know where they're gonna have to figure it out. And both their goalies, Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard, are both UFAs next year. So they got a lot of decisions to make, and I think if like obviously McDavid's gonna command the like upwards of like you said, 18 mil. Who knows? It's going to be more than Draisaitl at 14. I don't know how Edmonton stays competitive with the contracts they have. And they're going to, like I said, they're going to have to sign a lot of like league min deals just to fill out a roster, just to fill out your bottom six and your bottom pair defensemen. And they're going to have to still to find goalies in this scenario as well. So I do think Florida or Edmonton's got issues, and I think the issue is going to be staying competitive when they got to figure out these contracts.
Yeah, be very interesting next couple of years for um the oil country. Let's just say, okay, McDavid's been to two straight finals, lost both, won the Conn Smythe, won the other. Do you see a world where if they don't? make it back, like say he doesn't sign an extension this offseason, nothing throughout the season, do you see a can you see McDavid testing the open market next year?
I actually could. You look at his face last, or I guess for us it wasn't last night, but you look at his face when they lost the cup finals, and he is just defeated. Like, obviously, he didn't have the best finals,
For
but
his
honestly, like I think it was just kind of blinded by us by the fact that their depth was scoring. But when you actually take a step back and look at this roster, like it's not great. And he and Draisaitl and those top guys are really dragging them like a lot farther than I think if you just looked at this roster on paper, what you would think would go. And I think he's giving all he can, and he's seen now that when he gives all he can and Draisaitl gives all they can, they're still not good enough. And as we've just discussed, their money problems are only getting tighter. I could see a world where he's realized we just can't do it here. And I feel like winning a Stanley Cup, you can see it in his body language. It weighs heavy on him. Like he really wants to win one. And I could just, I don't think it'll happen. I think he will stay in Edmonton, but I could see a world where he's like, damn, I've done all I can. And by the time his contract's up, he's 29 and he's like, I still haven't done it. I don't know if this group can do it. I should just leave while I can.
Yeah. Obviously, it obviously brings up so many discussions about Crosby, Ovechkin, Gretzky, Lemieux. First of all, do you believe in legacies, and do you think this losing two straight Stanley Cups does anything to hurt McDavid's legacy? If you do believe in legacies,
I do believe in legacies. The only thing I try not to do is put losing on like a negative aspect of your legacy. I think winning improves your legacy. I don't I don't think these losses decrease his legacy, if that makes sense. If you feel what I'm saying. Like
yeah,
we all know he's the best player currently in the NHL. He's dragging I don't want to say dragging because they are still a playoff team, but he's bringing this team far in the playoffs 2 years in a row where like they weren't division winners or anything. Like they were third in their division this year and they made it to the cup finals and I think they were second last year in their division, made it to the finals. They've beaten good teams along the way both years pretty convincingly in Dallas and Vegas this year, and even LA's underrated team in my opinion. They just can't get over the hump. But I don't think it decreases his legacy, but I think winning would increase his legacy quite a bit.
for sure.
Just because he's being compared to Crosby and Wayne, and I mean Crosby had won a cup at the age of 21, I believe.
Crosby
So
had had two by this time.
yeah, exactly. So I feel like I don't know. I feel like winning. He's got to win a cup, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, so we talked about the Frederick extension. There was two more sort of contract extensions that were pending UFAs that I thought weren't going to get done, but Ryan Donato signed 4x4 in Chicago. He was a good player this year. I don't have his stats on me. Um, and then just announced right before we started recording, Matt Duchene re-signed in Dallas, 4 years, 4.25 mil. That leaves Dallas with 500K in salary cap. Thoughts on the deals? I thought
Yeah,
both these guys were gonna get more, potentially more on the open market, so potential hometown discounts to sort of stay with teams and stay with the fit.
yeah. I was going to ask you about both of these. It's kind of funny you asked me. I've been doing all the talking here,
That's because I
but
did last time.
um, I know we're kind of switching roles here. I love the deal for Ryan Donato. I mean, I know it's his like first real deal, first real year popping off,
He had 31 goals, 31 assists for 62 points.
and he is 29. So I do think you're not going to get as Chicago gets better, Ryan Donato is going to slot lower and lower down the lineup, right? And obviously, he's not going to put up the stats he put up this year, but you don't need him to. It's $4 million bucks. for the next 4 years. The cap's going up every year, so that's going to look like a great deal. And for Chicago, they're in a spot right now where they're trying to get good, and they just need guys in the lineup. And to have somebody that played there last year re-sign, like that shows players that guys that played in this locker room on this team that was so bad last year want to come back. And maybe that'll show some people in free agency that, hey, Ryan Donato played on this team last year, and obviously he enjoyed it enough where he actually wanted to come back. And this team, we can both agree, is only going to get better and better. So I feel like it's not only, I think it's bigger for Chicago itself, just in a whole, like attracting free agents, possibly saying like, hey, people actually want to play here. Look at this guy re-signed. I don't know if that was the first thing that jumped at me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think you look at like we talked last week really quickly on Anaheim, but I think t more teams like Chicago, like teams like San Jose, all these teams are like finally at the point where they want to start getting better. So
Yep.
it makes sense to retain these guys. I know Donato at the trade deadline was a really big piece and teams were willing to throw first round picks. Chicago decided to keep him, obviously for this reason. They thought or knew that they could get an extension done. And yeah, it just shows that the teams that have been on the bottom the last few years are ready to sort of take those next steps. And it's good to see. I know you listen to 32 Thoughts a decent amount. I do too. But I found it really funny the other day. I don't know if you listened to this episode where Elliot Friedman said basically everyone is trying to get better except Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I know. Pittsburgh's getting slack.
Pittsburgh's the only one. Pittsburgh just keeps catching slack, but you gotta get worse to get better. Pittsburgh's done a lot of winning over the years, so all these teams that haven't done winnings are finally starting to get better, which is good. I like a competitive league. Don't like teams actually tanking, but I find it weird. I don't know. This might just be a conspiracy that teams are starting to want to get worse whenever we have probably one of the better draft picks next year coming since probably McDavid. I think he's got more hype already than Bedard, guys like
Hmm.
that, and Gav McKenna. So, but we did see this year that the lottery is literal luck. The Islanders had like a 2% chance to win the lottery, and they jumped up to one. But yeah, I really like that these teams are starting to want to get better, and starting to make the league a bit more competitive. Like you saw, even this year, like I know some teams in Metro were kind of weak, but like we were playing today, or they were playing up until the last game this year, and it still meant something for like the last wild card spot, which is good to see.
100%. Like you said, I mean, we've seen in the NBA and the NHL this year, like first, like the worst team in the league does not guarantee you the first pick. So why not try and be as competitive as possible? Like all these teams that we're talking about trying to be good, the San Jose's, the Anaheims, the Chicago's, apart from Anaheim, none of those teams are making playoffs. So just them getting better still what puts them at seventh worst in the league, something like that. So they still have a great shot at the number one pick. So I think it does make sense in that regard, like you were saying. But I do want to switch over to Dallas. I'll let you give your thoughts. Dallas currently has $455,000 in cap space as they signed Duchesne to a 4 by 4.5. Um, their current UFAs and RFAs are Jamie Benn, Dadnoff, Granlund, Colin Blackwell, and they have Maverick Bork as an RFA. And on the defense, Brendan Smith, who's 36, Cody Ceci, who's 31. But then you have Niels Lundqvist, who's 24, and obviously both your goalies are signed. But there is a lot of decent players, in particular Niels Lundqvist, Maverick Bork, and Jamie Benn, who this team will be looking to re-sign, but only have $455,000 in cap space. And to make it even harder, like this team doesn't have a first round pick in the next 2 years. They don't have a second this year. They don't have a fourth this year. They don't have any picks to trade to try and get cap space better. So it seems like I don't know where. Maybe you think of Jason Robertson because his name's been out there, but they're going to have to make a trade in house to clear up some space. So
Yeah, it's they do have a lot of free agents pending. I don't think Jamie Benn will be hard to get back. He's the captain. I think he's looking at a minimum deal. Guys like Lundqvist and Bork, Bork was their first round pick from like 3 years ago. I've talked about it a lot the last two episodes, but I think he's also a prime candidate for an offer sheet. Dallas literally cannot afford to bring him back if he gets offer sheeted, so it's pretty much an easy team. Pittsburgh has been linked to him. I know we're talking about that, where Kyle Dubas has been wanting to get these younger guys, but I would not be surprised if Pittsburgh threw an offer sheet at him. Guys that look to me like cap casualties, I don't see them moving Jason Robertson. I know that his name has been thrown out there, but this team is wanting to win now. You know, they're not in a rebuild, especially with this low money. They just signed Duchesne back at the age of 32, 33, I think. Um, it just looks more to me like Mason Marchment's the guy that is the odd one out. And it also doesn't help that they gave Matt Dumba and Ilya Lyubushkin bad contracts. These guys are making 3 and 4 mil for the next 2 to 3 years, and they weren't even in your lineup for the NHL playoffs. So those contracts might come back to bite them. But a guy like Mason Marchment is a guy who stands out to me as a cap casualty. They might have to attach something in the future to get rid of him, or even the rights to Maverick Bork. I could see a team like Pittsburgh, for example, taking on that Marchment contract, because Pittsburgh does have cap space, and then taking the rights to sign Maverick Bork, just so they don't have to offer sheet him and give up a future asset like a second round pick or whatever the heck the offer sheet compensation is. But a guy like Mason Marchment is looking to me like the odd man out in this scenario.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I just don't see what else they can move to get there because you're obviously not trading Rantanen, Sagan, Hintz, or Wyatt Johnston. Those are your big boys. So other than that, like the only other people on contract are Jason Robertson, whose name has been thrown around, and Matt Duchene, who they literally signed today. So he will not be getting traded because if you were getting traded, I think we would have heard about a sign and trade already.
Yeah.
So it basically comes down to Mason Marchment or Jason Robertson, or you lose two young people in Maverick Bork and Niels Lundqvist, basically. So obviously they are going to have to make some moves. And looking at next year, Thomas Harley needs a deal. And if they keep Jason Robertson, he needs a deal. So again, another situation where money's going to be tight here for a team
Yeah,
like Dallas.
they're a very similar scenario to a team like Edmonton, but I do think that the cap going up in the future will help them, because they're gonna have more cap space next year. So getting those guys like Harley, and if they keep Robertson on new deals, shouldn't be as hard with that new cap going up. I don't know if you have anything left to talk to about, or
Well, I mean, if we can look at if we're trying to figure out these teams, we can look at Pittsburgh's situation here. Pittsburgh has $23 million in cap space,
Mhm.
and currently their signing list looks like Matt Nieto, and then they have a bunch of RFAs in Connor Dewar, Philip Tomasino, and you're gonna have to help me, Vasily Ponomarev.
Ponomarev. So
That was pretty
Panamara,
good.
he is already signed in the KHL, but Pittsburgh is retaining his rights, so he won't be back in the NHL for at least 3 years. He's another player that came over in the Jake Gensel trade. It made sense. He did get some run in the NHL at the end of the year, didn't do much. So I think he sort of is going back over there um, for more hockey experience and to play at a higher level. Guys like Connor Dewar and Philip Tomasino, I see them coming back on deals. Pittsburgh wants these young guys, and Connor Dewar actually did look pretty good with Pittsburgh after they got him from Toronto. He didn't have a goal at Toronto, and then he scored like 3 goals in the first 3 games he played with Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
He's still like what, 24, 25, so he's still one of those players that Dubas is wanting to get in that lineup to increase the youth. And yeah, Pittsburgh has lots of cap space. I think they're going to have to retain a bit on Eric Carlson if they want to get rid of him. No team is going to take on that contract. Whether that's 25% or 50%, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, Pittsburgh does have lots of cap space, and I don't think they're going to be using a lot of it this offseason. I know a lot of Pens reporters and beat writers are seeing them as sort of being more of a trade-centered team this offseason, and then spending big the following year on some guys because it's a bit of a more of a loaded free agency class the following year.
Yeah, so I want to kind of bring up a question about Pittsburgh. Considering they have 23 mil in cap space, and as we just mentioned, they're not really going to be spending any of that on their forwards as they're all young, haven't proved it in the NHL yet, RFAs, so going to be pretty cheap. And on defense, you only have Connor Timmins, who won't command much. Uh, POJ won't command much either. And then Matt Grizzlick. So they're going to have, I would say, if they re-sign those guys, they're going to have high teens left in cap space, and their draft scenario, as we talked about last podcast, is really good. Like this year, they got two firsts, a second, three thirds, a fourth, two fifths. Next year, they have a first, three seconds, two thirds, and then the year after that, they have a first, two seconds, three thirds, two fourths. They get a lot of draft picks already, but do you think they could be a destination where um, they could just take on bad contracts for even more draft picks and or young players?
Yeah, they're definitely going to be, like I mentioned, the young player market. Guys like Maverick Bork, guys like Marco Rossi, people like that that are young, proven or not proven yet, but like Marco Rossi's a proven player, but like Maverick Bork still has upside being a first round pick, just hasn't really had the chance in Dallas. But I don't see them eating a lot of bad contracts, based off the fact that I think Kyle Dubas is going to want to spend the following year. But that being said, if it's a 1 year deal, like if it's like a Marchman who has 1 year deal left on his deal this year, I could totally see them taking him on and then trying to flip him at the deadline with retained salary. I think you're going to see a lot of like last year with Pittsburgh where they are going to sign people July 1st if any, to 1 year deals to possibly flip at the deadline. So this year is going to be sort of another wash year for Pittsburgh and then try to go and sign some big players to try to finally get better next year.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Lastly, we got time for one more
We
thing.
have less than a minute, so better make it quick.
Okay, we got to make it quick. We ended the pod. We started on Florida. We'll end on Florida. Florida's got 19 million cap space, and their big three are Marchand, Sam Bennett, and Aaron Ekblad. Where do you see them going with those three?
Two or three are going to stay. I think it's going to be Bennett and Marchand that stay. I think they'll take hometown discounts. I think Aaron Ekblad has priced himself out of Florida, and being that they offered him less on an extension than he already makes right now, shows that they don't really value him that much. And they have Seth Jones now. So yeah.
Yeah, I
All
like
right.
that.
We will leave it there. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you leave, like, subscribe, and we'll be back next week. Peace.